This is the final video on my study, The Harmonized Revelation of Jesus Christ. This is the 3 addendums that I mentioned in my videos and in my text. Addendum 1 is the timing of the seals, trumpets, and bowls. There are 7 seals, 7 trumpets, and 7 bowls. 21 total. 21 total judgments that all take place ever since the flood, at the very least. Most of these take place during the time period, the 7 years of the Great Tribulation. But some of them have been taking place forever. The first 4 are the 4 horsemen. These judgments have been going on since at least the Great Flood. The 5th seal is not an actual judgment at the time of the other seals. It will be fulfilled at the last great day of judgment when Christ establishes his 1,000-year reign in Jerusalem. During the last 3.5 years of the Great Tribulation, there will be 12 judgments. Seals 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. Trumpets 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. On the last great day, there will be 8 judgments, the 7th trumpet, the last trumpet, and the 7 bowl judgments. Numbers. In 2018, there were 7.594 billion people in the earth. The projection for 2037 is 9 billion. So if the world's population in 10 years, about the minimal amount of time before the last 3.5 years of the Great Tribulation could end, is around 8.5 billion, how many would be alive at Christ's return to establish his millennial reign? We don't know. Seal 1, an unknown number is killed. Seal 2, an unknown number is killed. Seal 3, an unknown number is killed, because these have been taking place forever. Seal 4, 1/4 of the Earth's population. Currently, that would be about 2,125,000,000. Now, I haven't done the research. I haven't looked for the research, but I would imagine that about 1/4 of the Earth's population dies every year from every kind of circumstance. In Seal 5, no one is killed. In Seal 6 and 7, there's an unknown number of people killed. And the first 5 trumpets, there's an unknown number of people killed. And in Trumpet 6, about 1/3 of the population is killed. Right now, that would be about 1,938,750,000 people. In Trumpet 7, we know that 7,000 people in the city of Jerusalem will be killed. And in the bowls, no number is given of the number that will be killed. In fact, we know that in one of the trumpets, no one is going to be killed because of the plague of the locusts, because they're only going to torment people for 5 months, and people aren't going to die from that torment. But that doesn't mean that people won't die from all the other stuff that's going on. So, we don't really know any totals. I just put some totals in here based on current population. But as of 2015, there's an estimated 2,400,000,000 Christians of all Christian faiths, which includes a lot of non-actual Christians, just people who believe that they are, with a projected growth of 2,918,070,000 by the year 2050. So in 10 years, we'll say there are 2.5 billion Christians of all faiths when the last 3.5 years of the Great Tribulation starts. There's an unknown number that's going to be martyred during that time. The total number of not real Christians that follow the Antichrist is unknown. The number of true Christians is unknown. And the total caught up to Jesus in the last day is unknown. The number of in Jerusalem reigning with Christ for 1,000 years, at least 144,000 years, and an unknown number of those who are killed during the tribulation period, of Christians killed during the tribulation period. So people get caught up with a lot of numbers. Don't worry about them. They don't make any sense to us. God knows, and that's all we need to know. Addendum 2, from Verse by Verse Ministry International. In Revelation 7, the 144,000 Jewish men raised up to evangelize the world come from 12 tribes of Israel, but the tribe of Dan is missing from the list. Why? The absence of Dan in the list of tribes in Revelation 7 is a source of much interest among Bible students. The text itself offers no explanation, but we can speculate based on some analysis. First, it's important to note that there are 13 named tribes in Jerusalem, not 12. Jacob bore 12 sons, but later Jacob adopted Joseph's 2 sons in place of Joseph after moving to Egypt. Therefore, the sons of Jacob were Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Zebulun, Issachar, Dan, Gad, Asher, Naphtali, Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin. Secondly, there are at least 19 lists of Jacob's sons given in the Old Testament, and I list those here. Reviewing these lists, we usually find all 13 tribes included, though sometimes a tribe is left out, usually Levi. For example, in Numbers 1, 2, 13, and 26, the tribe of Levi is left out. And this is because they weren't given their own areas of land in the Promised Land, but were given sections and cities of land in each of the other 12 areas. In other cases, Joseph's 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, are combined just under the name Joseph. In one case, multiple tribes are missing, in Judges 5. So we see that it's not unusual for Scripture to leave names out when listing the tribes of Israel. But then we have the list in Revelation 7. This list is unique in several ways. First, it is the only list of the tribes of Israel in Scripture to exclude Dan. Secondly, it is the only list to include Joseph in place of one of his sons instead of both sons. Specifically, Joseph and Manasseh appear in the Revelation 7 list, but Ephraim does not. Perhaps the exclusions of Dan and Ephraim are related. Thirdly, the territories originally allotted to the tribes of Ephraim and Dan bordered one another in Canaan. But during the time of Judges, Dan rejected its claim and moved north to occupy a part of the territory of Naphtali. Finally, even though the name Joseph is listed in Revelation 7, no territory or tribe of Joseph actually exists. Joseph didn't receive a portion of the land. His 2 sons were adopted by Jacob and received Joseph's double portion instead. This raises the question, how can there be 12,000 from Joseph during tribulation, when such a tribe does not exist? Given these clues, we can offer speculation on why Dan and Ephraim are missing from the list. In Judges 17 through 21, we're given 2 stories of apostasy in Israel. Both stories center on the tribes of Dan and Ephraim and in the city of Bethlehem, the birthplace of David. God's choice for king over Israel. The writer of Judges emphasizes in these chapters that these were the days before Israel had a king. In those chapters in Judges, Dan sinned by viewing the land God allotted to them as unacceptable, so they abandoned it. While passing through Ephraim, they stole idols from a home and recruited a Levite to serve as a false temple in the new territory. As a result, Dan became the first tribe in Israel to embrace idol worship in Israel. Meanwhile, the tribe of Ephraim, the source of the idols, assumed control over the land originally intended for Dan. They aided and abetted the Danites in bringing idolatry into the land of Israel. These sins give just cause for God to exclude them from the privilege of preparing Israel and the world for the Messiah's return. Furthermore, the tribe of Manasseh is already included in the list of 7. Then we know the tribe of Joseph can't represent his 2 sons, as is usually the case in Scripture. Instead, Joseph still represents 2 tribes, but in this case, Joseph replaces Dan and Ephraim, tribes historically and geographically linked by their conspiracy to introduce rebellion and idolatry into Israel. So they are excluded from the list by name, with the name Joseph standing in their place. Such a substitution allowed the Lord to retain the symmetry of 12 tribes, while drawing attention to these tribes' joint contribution to idolatry in Israel. Since there is no literal tribe of Joseph, in a sense, we could say that Dan and Ephraim were hidden in Joseph. If so, then the 12,000 men of the tribe of Joseph in the tribulation will actually be Danites and Ephraimites. There is a deeper message in this exclusion. The apostasy of Dan and Ephraim represented the low point in Israel's history immediately prior to the Lord raising up a king from Bethlehem to deliver them from its sin. Sound familiar? This is exactly the pattern that will exist prior to the Lord's return to rule over Israel at the end of tribulation. By excluding these 2 tribes from the list in Revelation 7, the Lord is pointing our attention back to the circumstances at the end of Judges. The final chapters of Judges, 17 to 21, and the story of Ruth, which follows Judges, form a 3-part story of the king's arrival to address the nation's idolatry. Parts 1 and 2, the story found in Judges 17 to 21, chronicle the growing apostasy of Israel under the influence of the Danites and Ephraimites. Part 3 of the story is found in Ruth, where the Messiah's arrival in Bethlehem, pictured by the arrival of Naomi's son in Bethlehem, serves as the hope of Israel. These events picture the greater arrival of Christ to rescue Israel from apostasy. A note here is that it wasn't Naomi's son, but it was Ruth's son, Naomi's daughter-in-law, who married Boaz. Therefore, Dan and Ephraim are missing from the list of Revelation 7 to draw our attention to the time of Judges, to illustrate that Israel is once again guilty of apostasy, as it was in the Judges under Dan and Ephraim. And once again, the Lord will bring Israel a king from Bethlehem to rescue Israel from its apostasy. That is Jesus Christ. By excluding these 2 tribes, the Lord is emphasizing the 3rd part of the story is right around the corner. Again, this is from Verse by Verse Ministries International. Addendum 3 is about calendars. The Jewish calendar is based on a lunar cycle of 29.5 days. So it is 12 months of 29.5 days, or 354 days. Actually, starting with the first month of Nisan of 30 days, every other month is 29 days, or 6 months with 29 days and 6 months of 30 days for 354 days. The Jewish calendar now celebrates the new year in Tishri, the 7th month, not Nisan, the 1st month. Over the years, the Jewish calendar has been adjusted to match the solar calendar that includes adding 2 months every so often, so that through the centuries its year count may be off. The current Jewish year is 5782, and I first completed this book in 2020. The Essenes were Jewish religious purists from about 200 BC through 100 AD. John the Baptist was one. They believed that the Pharisee calendar was corrupted. Their calendar was based on God's solar calendar, a 364-day year. And this is referenced in the book of Enoch, chapter 72, verse 32b. They also count the history of the world based on Adam fathering Seth at 133 years old, Genesis 5:3. The first year of creation, according to the Essenes, would be our year 3926 to 3925 BC. Excuse me. making 5945 in 2022, the current year. They believed that Earth's time was divided into 3 2,000-year eras and 1 1,000-year era related to our years. Repeating without the sinus interruptions. They believed that the Earth's time was divided into 3 2,000-year eras and 1 1,000-year era relating to our years. 1 BC to the time of Abraham is the first era. From the time of Abraham to 75 AD is the second era, and 75 AD to 2075 is the third era, and then the final 1,000 years, is 2075 to 3075. This information on the Essenes is from the Thomas Horn book, Zeitgeist 2025, by Defender Publishing in 2021. I believe in the 7-day theory. I have never seen or heard any teaching on it until I read about the Essenes. But in the biblical cycles of days, months, and years, I believe that humanity's time on the earth is 6,000 years, or 6 days, followed by Christ's 1,000 year, or 1 day reign over the earth from Jerusalem, after the example of the 7 days of creation. So humanity has 53 to 218 more years, depending on whose calendar is correct. But that is not strict in the sense that we do not know God's timetable. His timetable is based on the scriptures that give us the Great Commission and markers and signs to watch for. Could we be in the last days with the Antichrist coming to power soon? I pray so. God bless you as you continue to seek God, as you continue to understand His Word, continue to be obedient and faithful in serving Him.